Our next speaker will be Vicky Ni from the University of Southern California.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vicky. I'm from University of Southern California. Okay, here we go. 1 second. I think it's still loading. Okay. So today I'm going to share our recent work on theory of mind development. Our title has been updated to the role of experiential records in Toddlers' false belief understanding. So today I will go through some background information really quickly and introduce our current study with 2 experiments. When we're talking about belief understanding in theory of mind studies, we're mainly talking about the beliefs formed from early experiences or interactions. For example, Sally believes the marble is in a basket because she puts the marble there initially. And while Sally is gone, we saw the marble being moved to the box. Then in our beliefs, the marble is no longer in the basket. That's when divergence arises between people's beliefs. Following this idea, there has been a series of false belief tests created to test theory of mind development. They reviewed this age threshold at the age of 4 to 5 years. It seems that there is a critical turning point when children come to understand that people's subjective representations do not always correspond with reality. However, with some indirect or implicit measurement, like the looking time measurement or the help paradigm, it seems like toddlers and even infants have some theory of mind skills. Even though some of tasks are experiencing replication crisis, but they still offer some inconsistent findings in this field. So this leads to a long-lasting debate in theory of mind study. So on the one hand, the received view argues that there is a conceptual change at around age 4 to 5, which allows preschoolers to understand beliefs. On the other hand, the nativist view argues that humans are born with ability to understand mental states, including beliefs. In recent years, there is this middle position being articulated. It's saying that infants have partially developed abilities to attribute and represent mental states, and later they develop deeper forms of mind reading. Although the middle position comes in different shapes, it includes a lot of theories. Many of them pointed out that infants track and anticipate others' actions, and they do so by building records of others' experiences, which is termed experiential record. So when we see Sally put the marble in the basket, there is a piece of experiential record registers in our mind, which contains Sally, the agent, marble, and the basket, the objects, and the relation between the agent and the objects. So when seeing an agent return to the scene, the record gets activated, and this will let the infants or us think about the agent's recent interaction with the objects. In our previous study, we confirmed the importance of experiential records in toddlers' theory of mind. We tested the role of experiential record in belief understanding by looking at whether 3-year-olds understand the nexus between appearance and belief formation. So we used this series of deceptive objects. They look just like real food items, but they are actually inedible. They are made of plastic or something else. We create this first situation in which puppet A interacted with the real food item, and later puppet B replaced the real food item with a deceptive item, which has the identical appearance. And then we have puppet A come back and walk towards that fake item. And that's the case when experiential record is available. In another situation, when there is no experiential record, we only have puppet A state her preference for the food item, and then we have puppet B place this deceptive item on stage, and the rest is the same. So as adults, we know that in both situations, puppet A may get disappointed, there may be something terrible happen, puppet A may actually take a bite of that deceptive object. But in our study, we find that for 3.5-year-olds, they only show signs of understanding this kind of false expectation or false belief when experiential record is available. So this shows they rely on records of others' experiences to be able to anticipate their actions. However, the role of experiential records is not yet sufficiently clear, nor has it been systematically explored. Some questions we may ask is, for example, what kinds of interaction do toddlers need to witness in order to build experiential record? And to build records, do they need to directly witness the interaction, or is it sufficient to just infer what the agent has interacted with? So those will be the focus of our current study. As the middle position suggested, infants keep records of others' physical or perceptual interactions with objects. So this is true in many of the infancy studies modeled after the change of location task. In many of those studies, there was an agent who perceived an object through vision or touch and then left it in a certain location before it's moved. So in this case, children can always witness this perceptual interaction at the beginning. So it may not be sufficient for toddlers to witness how agent learns about object's presence indirectly, for example, through others' testimony. So our research question from our first experiment is an agent's direct perceptual encounter with an object necessary for children to register as expecting the object? Or is it sufficient that the agent learns about the object through testimony? So we're comparing witnessing perceptual interaction versus witnessing testimonial interaction. To measure belief understanding, here we used a relatively novel measurement. We measured toddlers' expressions. We propose that expressions reveal in a direct, non-symbolic way of how a certain situation is conceived. And this paradigm capitalizes on children's affective investment while watching puppet shows. Specifically, we're looking for suspenseful expressions. So this paradigm is called a suspense paradigm. So imagine like when people are watching a horror movie, if there is a ghost hiding somewhere and the character doesn't know, but the audience, they know. And if we pause right there, we will see a lot of expressions on the audience face. They may show like a lip bite, smirk, they may laugh, or they may use their hands covering their mouths. So those are the expressions we're looking for. So we simplified this situation. We create this story in which this puppet is going to experience something unexpected, is going to receive a disappointing outcome at the end. So we have this puppet walk slowly towards that disappointing outcome. So along the way, children will show a lot of suspenseful expressions like lip bite, smirk, or frowned eyebrow. Those expressions indicate the suspense children feel knowing that the agent will not encounter what they expect. And this paradigm has been used in the previous studies from our lab. We find that 2 and 3 years express suspense in anticipation of others experiencing unexpected reality. So taken together, we will use the suspense paradigm to answer this question. Is witnessing others' experiences perceptually and directly necessary for toddlers' mental state descriptions? And our hypothesis is yes. And we predict their 3-year-olds will show more expressions when agent finds something unexpected after a direct perceptual interaction with the object. In our first experiment, we had 30 kids. They were 3-year-olds, and they were recruited from social media and local neighborhoods. They participate in our study online using their computers or tablets at home, and they watched 4 pre-recorded puppet shows. Each story had a food item, a replacement, a container, and puppets. So in our experiment 1, we used a waiting subject design. Each participant watched 4 stories, 2 in the perceptual version and 2 in the testimonial version. In the perceptual version, first here comes the encounter. Puppet A takes the goldfish crackers out from the container and interacted with it. And then puppet B shows up and did this replacement. He replaced the goldfish crackers with wooden blocks. So now there are no longer goldfish crackers in the container. And then we have puppet A return. And that's the test phase when we code children's suspenseful expressions. In another version of the story, the testimonial version, instead of having puppet A open the box, we have a third puppet who showed up and told puppet A, hey, there are goldfish crackers in this container, and then the rest is the same. We have 2 human coders to code children's suspenseful expressions. So they will first watch a baseline for 10 seconds. This is to capture how expressive a kid is when there is no tension in the story. Because like some kids, they are more expressive, and some kids, they tend to show a neutral face. And then the coders coded those 4 phases, and each test phase will last around 23 seconds. Before we get into the results, let's take a look at the trial and the perceptual version. So remember, now puppet A has perceptually directly interacted with a food item, and the food item has been replaced with something else. Now puppet A is going to come back. Let's see how this kid reacts.
Hi, I'm back.
Ooh, I'm going to get them now.
So as you can see, when puppet A shows up, the kid immediately senses something wrong is happening here. So this kid showed a lot of expressions like mouth open, furrowed eyebrow, and even some bodily movements as bodily expressions like neck tension, and she even pointed at the screen. This may indicate that this kid anticipates the puppet is going to get disappointed, find something unexpected. So that's the reason why she showed a lot of expressions. So for time's sake, I won't play the whole 23-second video. And now let's move on to the results. For our experiment 1, okay. 1 second. Okay, so in our experiment 1, we find more suspenseful expressions in the perceptual condition than in the testimonial condition. This tells us only when children watch the agent directly perceiving an object, we're able to ascribe a belief-like state. So our experiment 1 confirms that witnessing a direct perceptual interaction is superior compared to a testimonial interaction. But one question we may ask is, are such direct perceptual interaction necessary? To be more specific, do toddlers need to experience the perceptual relation between agent and object, or is it sufficient to just infer what the agent saw? So in our experiment 2, we add this inferential version where children need to piece together experiential record. We had 90 kids for our experiment 2. They were recruited from similar sources, and they participated in a study online and watched 4 pre-recorded puppet show stories. This time, we used a mixed design. We have story version as a between subject variable. Participants were assigned to watch one version of the story. The perceptual version and the testimonial version were identical to the ones we had in experiment 1. In this new story version, the inferential version, this time we have the puppet open the lid of that box, and this puppet only take a peek at the inside of the box. So in this case, children are forced to infer that this puppet now knows what's in the box. And then we have condition as waving subject variable. So there are 2 stories in the experimental condition and 2 stories in the control condition. In the experimental condition, we have the replacement. So puppet A will not get what she expects. But in the control condition, there is no replacement. So puppet A is going to get exactly what she expects. In our results, we find this interaction between story version and condition. Only in the perceptual version was there a significant effect of condition, and this difference was not observed in the testimonial condition or the inferential condition. This tells us 3-year-olds need to rely on experiential records built from directly witnessing how an agent perceptually experiences an object. So taken together, our study findings are consistent with the middle position. So toddlers have theoretical mind skills that are limited in specific and predictable ways. So they form records of others' experiences and draw on these records when anticipating agents' actions and responses. And those records indeed contain direct perceptual experiences, not information gathered from testimony. Our study also confirms the usefulness of measuring expressions as indicators of theorem of mind. We propose that expressions offer a really useful window onto toddlers' grasp of the mind, and we hope to help make sense of the gap between the results from indirect tests and direct tests, because some of the indirect tests not only allow a child to build experiential record, but drawing on that record will also lead to a correct response by the child. Here is our reference section. And lastly, I would like to thank the conference and everyone here for this great opportunity. And also I would like to thank my amazing advisor, Dr. Henrique Mo, and everyone on our research team and everyone else from the Mindset Developmental Lab at USC. Thank you.
Okay, again, we have time for questions. There's one here in the front.
Thank you very much. Very interesting results. I was wondering whether there's also another difference between the diverse conditions. So in the direct experience, it is the agent who puts the object in the box, right? So there is a direct contact between the agent and the object. We know that this is her object, and probably when she comes back, we know what her goal is, that she wants to get the object. In the other conditions, we don't know whether she wants that object at all, whether there's the goal that she wants to find that object or she has any interest in that object. Is that a possible confound, or maybe I misunderstood the...
Yeah, thank you for the question. Let me go back to that slide. So in this experiment, we we want them to understand that those objects are not from the agent. So in the perceptual version, the objects are not placed there by the agent initially. So we actually have the container with the objects inside on stage already. And then this first puppet shows up, and the puppet will say something like, "Oh, look," and then go grab the container, opens it, and pull out the goldfish crackers and realize, oh, there are goldfish crackers. But they never explicitly name the goldfish crackers or doing something like else. And another thing we did to try to avoid the confound is at the end, when this puppet returns, we didn't ask the puppet to say anything like with the name of the content inside. Instead, this puppet will say something like, "Oh, let me go get some," without saying the name. So in this case, we try to make sure like the intention in both situations are equivalent. I hope this answers your question. Thank you.
Further questions? Okay, another one here.
Hi, I'm wondering what these results, and particularly because of the dependent measure that you're using, what they tell us about children's understanding of belief versus some other aspect of their theory of mind, like desire. So if you think about these suspenseful expressions as some understanding that the agent is going to be disappointed, maybe it requires direct perceptual access to really have a strong desire about an outcome. But in these inferential or other cases, the desire is not as strong, so they don't expect as much disappointment.
Yeah, that's a good question. So for our another two situations, for example, in the testimonial version, the third puppet did tell the first puppet, like, you can have some later because it's goldfish crackers. And kids in general, they love goldfish crackers and other sorts of food items here. So we did a lot of tests to make sure that they have this desire at like the same level. But it's true, maybe the desire, like the puppet gets from directly interacting with the object might be stronger, but we don't know yet. But that could be something we can test for our next study.
Time for one more question, if there is one. I have a very quick one about the measure. Does it only work in this direction? So if it's a disappointing outcome, or do you think you would see something similar if there's something better than what the puppet expects to be in the bucket? Could you also measure kids' facial expressions then?
Yes, that's a really good question. So we think this paradigm is based on this idea that if someone is going to expect experience something unexpected, they have this tension in the story, no matter it's something terrible or something really good. Actually, if this outcome is like really terrible, like a scary spider hiding in the box, we may actually get some actual emotional reactions from the kid. So we try to avoid that, so we use some neutral objects. But in the previous studies using this paradigm, they did some manipulations with the objects, which may actually make the object even like more intriguing for the kids, but they still see the expression using this paradigm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's thank the speaker again.